My name is Nora Diaz-Vasquez, and I am a career counselor with the Career Development Center. I am also the career liaison to the College of Health and Human Services. With us today, monitoring the chat, is our director, Debbie Young. So if you have any questions during our presentation today, feel free to type in your questions in the chat, and we will do our best to address those questions that you may have. Also with me are two of my colleagues, and at this time, I'll go ahead and hand it over to them for introductions.
Hi, my name is Marc Garcia. I'm the career liaison to the College of Arts and Humanities, and thank you for joining us today.
And I'm Alita Wolf, and I'm the career counselor liaison to the Laos College of Engineering and the University Advising Center.
Thank you, Marc. Thank you, Alita. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started with a poll. And you should see this come up in just a few seconds. So on a scale from 1 to 5, go ahead and rate your level of stress and or anxiety when interviewing, 1 being very low and 5 being the highest. So make sure you make your selection in the poll. All right, everyone, thank you for participating in this poll. So it looks like over 80% of you indicated either a 4 or a 5, meaning that you experience high levels of stress or anxiety when it comes to interviews. So with today's webinar, we'll be going over some tips and things that you can do to prepare yourself for that interview to hopefully lower that stress and anxiety level down. I do want to say that you are not alone. For those of you that selected a level 4 or level 5, stress and anxiety during interviews is quite normal. However, you just want to make sure that you're able to manage that stress and that anxiety so that it does not interfere with your performance in that interview. So let's go ahead and get started. All right, so I want to go ahead and just start off by going over the main purpose of that interview. And for the candidate, for you as the interviewee, the main reason why you're going into that interview is hopefully to get that job, correct? So you want to do your best in your interview to sell yourself, to sell your skills, your abilities, your education, or any training or certifications that you may have. The resume got you to the point where you're interviewing. And so in your interview, it's really important to support your resume with examples of how you applied your skills and the experiences that you have. In addition, you're there to make a good positive impression with that employer. So you want to sell yourself as the best candidate for the job. And just like you match yourself with your resume to the job description, you want to try to do your best to provide examples and evidence verbally to that employer throughout your interview. For the interviewer, the main purpose is really to attract the best candidate for that position and for that organization. So again, it's really important to prepare yourself and to keep these things in mind. Think of your interview as a meeting where there is going to be an exchange of information. So when you think about it that way, it might take a little bit of that stress out of your interview when you just think about you having a conversation with that employer that revolves around this position and what you have to offer. So for online interviewing, it's really important to approach your preparation just in the same way as you would prepare for an in-person interview. And so what this means is that doing your industry and your employer research is critical. The more prepared that you are, the more confident that you will feel in your interview, and the more knowledgeable that you will sound. So on this slide, you will see a few things that we encourage you to research. such as the services, the customers, or the clients that that employer works with or that organization. Look at their mission statement and their vision statement and goals as well, and think about how those align with your personal mission statement and your values, etc. So again, you're trying to match yourself to that organization. You want to make sure that they're going to be a good fit for you, just like they are making sure that you are a good fit for them. There are some resources on this slide as well. So we encourage you, of course, to Google that employer, go online, visit their website, dig through their information. There's a lot that you can find online. In addition to Googling them and going onto their website, go on LinkedIn. Yesterday, Alita did a very thorough presentation on LinkedIn. And so one of the other features with LinkedIn is that you can follow organizations and you can look for alumni that work within those specific organizations so that you're able to connect with them. And even as you're going through that application process, maybe conduct a few informational interviews to really get more inside information of what the culture within that organization is. In addition to that, there is also glassdoor.com. If any of you are familiar with Rate My Professor, this is very similar to that, only that organizations are being rated. So you will see ratings and comments and also types of interviews that that employer may conduct and the type of questions that they're asking that they're asking in their interviews. And then last on that list is vault.com. So if you're not familiar with this, there's a lot of information online that you can access. You can look at employer rankings, company reviews. There is actually also a way for you to search a certain occupation and read a little bit more about a day in the life of. And so that way when you go in, you are again much more knowledgeable and more realistic in terms of what those expectations might be from that employer. Again, the bottom line is that you want to go in as prepared as possible, and the more knowledgeable you are, the more knowledgeable that you will sound.
Thank you, Nora. So let's talk about dress for success. Dressing for success virtually is no different than dressing for success face-to-face. Head to toe. Why head to toe instead of just waist up on camera? It puts you in the right professional mind frame. You have 3 seconds to make a first impression. If you are presenting yourself in a professional manner and you look professional, then you come across as professional. The thing that you want to make sure that you do is be comfortable in your clothes. This means try your clothes on, sit at the computer, practice. You are going to be sitting for 45 minutes to an hour. And on the other side, you are only sitting for 45 minutes to an hour. So suit up. It's going to put you in a mindset. For some of you, there are different portions of the clothes that make you feel more powerful and more confident. For some, it's shoes. Others, it may be an accessory. Make sure you put those on. Treat it no different than if you were going into the actual face-to-face interview. The difference is make sure that you are prepared for the online world. And what does that mean in terms of the choices? Darker colors are best with little to no patterns. Go on and test what it may look like. Ties, anything that is shiny, silks can be problematic if there's a lot of patterns. So put that tie on, bring up the camera and see how the camera reads it, because it does look different on screen. Also, let's talk a little bit about virtual backgrounds. Currently, I am using a virtual background. And the reason it's important to be aware of how these work is that if you are using light colors, if you have a bottle of water, I did this yesterday while talking with my colleagues, you pick up a bottle of water and it will virtually disappear because it's trying to blend into the background. And this is another important reason why darker colors are best for your clothing. If you choose a virtual background, make sure you choose one that isn't too busy. if you're sitting in a space that doesn't come across as very professional, virtual backgrounds are a great way to go, but also practice with them, because fast movements can disrupt your virtual background and suddenly your hand will disappear, or you know, I have a dome here. It kind of will get a little dinty if I move too quickly. So be aware of these technology cons, okay? Remember, the first round of candidates are quickly eliminated by that 3-second rule to make the first impression, and appearance translates to performance. Nora, could you advance the slide? So for examples of appropriate dress, you can go to our Pinterest page, and it has examples for professional wear. And that's pinterest.com//FS careers. You can advance. So what does that translate to in terms of interview attire? Realize that even in a setting where there may be a relaxed approach to office attire, the interview is always a step up. It maintains that professional look. If you are ever unsure about it, get a second opinion. There are examples, and realize that every industry has a different approach to their attire. If you are in ag, a business suit probably isn't the way to go, because an interview might actually be at an ag location. But it does mean to dress up and not wear the worst boots that you have. Same thing if you're interviewing, say, in theater tech. You want to still dress nicer than what you would on the site. I'm going to hand this over to one of my other colleagues. Thank you.
Nora, can I jump in?
Yep.
Nora's mute. Yeah, Nora, you're muted. Probably a lot of people in the audience, an individual asked this question: are you going to address how do you deal with stress and anxiety prior to the interview? I'm pretty old and I still feel stress and anxiety before interviews. So I mentioned maybe some deep breathing and some visualization techniques. Do any of the panelists have any other ideas on what an individual could do while they're out in that waiting room and their hands are sweating and they're wringing, you know, kind of their fingers, they're very nervous? Any ideas on what they could do to alleviate that?
Do you mind if I jump in? So this actually, remember that you are in your own space. That's the upside here. So you treat it like any other interview, except you're not having to go there. What that means is you have the opportunity to be in a safe space. And for everybody, that mindset is different as to how you approach getting set in your mind. So possibly meditation is one way. Music is very powerful for everybody, most people. So whatever that playlist may look like for you, for some it's going to be soft and melodic. For others, it might be more driving to give you that confidence and give you that energy that you would possibly need for that interview. Possibly it's reaching out to your friend or mentor before the interview actually takes place to get some support and be ready for it. Nora, Lita, anything else?
I would like to add, you know, you want to think about what aspects maybe of the interview make you the most nervous, and really think about the strategies that you can take to make those aspects of that interview a little less nerve-wracking. So, like, for example, and I know this is going to come up later on in our presentation. Let's say you have maybe short-term memory and you're getting questions that have multiple aspects to them. It's okay to take some notes with you, or not notes, but paper and a pencil, and take notes during that interview to make sure that you're writing down keywords so that you remember all the components to that interview question. You want to, another thing that you know, I typically recommend is think of your interview beginning at the time that you get up, right? So the day before, you should have your clothes set up, and you should kind of have your day planned out so that you're giving yourself plenty of time to go through the motions, whether that means having a good breakfast in the morning, giving yourself time to meditate, or just review your resume in advance. And in fact, you can take your resume with you to that interview. If it's an in-person interview, you can also have it in front of you if it's an online interview, so that you can use that as a reference for some of the interview questions that you might get, because you can't anticipate everything that they're going to ask you. But if you have those tools in front of you, then if you go blank, you can quickly glance down, and your mind will start coming up with ideas or ways in which you can answer those questions properly. So those would be my tips to try to address the stress and the nerves. Is there anything you'd like to add, Alita?
You both covered that pretty closely, and I know Debbie's been answering that in the chat as well. So yeah, sometimes that, like Debbie said, having some stress kind of keeps you aware and keeps you, that heart pumping, and keeps you, kind of going through that process. So by, I think, preparing, and that's what you're doing today. You are here today to prepare. And I think just like anything, preparation makes you feel a little bit more confident. It's the same as when you, I always like to tell students, when you go in for a test, right? You know how you feel when you didn't study enough? You go in there and you do your best, but you don't want to go in there and do your best. You want to be ready. So when you studied for that test and you're ready, you're more confident and more comfortable. And hopefully that, by listening to our tips today and practicing, which I'll be talking about in a little while, these are some things that we think could help you with that stress. Okay, we're good? All right, so we're going to be moving on now, I believe. Yeah, Debbie's going to be addressing that. So let's go ahead and move on for the sake of time. So far we've talked about the purpose of an interview, the importance of research and preparing, and dressing for success. So now we're going to address the breakdown of an interview and what 4 aspects candidates are evaluated on in an interview. And so as you see in the slide, the 4 areas include job qualifications, communication, attitude, and appearance. So we're going to see if you can pick what is the most important out of these 4 aspects, which are all, of course, important. But we're going to have a poll right now, and we want to see what you think is the most important aspect to an employer. So go ahead and pick one of those. Looks like the poll is all right. So we all voted, and looks like 45% of you picked attitude, which is actually the correct answer. Now, as we said, all 4 are important, but attitude is key. All right. So we're going to talk about that next. All right. Okay. So yes, again, attitude is the key element to successful interviewing. And as you can see in this pie chart right here, attitude received the highest rating by employers at 40%. And next was followed, it was a tie between basically appearance and communication, both at 25%, and 10% are job qualifications. So let's look at how you can display that can-do attitude in the next slide, okay? All right. So you want to be ready to incorporate this attitude into your interview. And so you want to display that positive attitude. You want to share excellence, and you want to explain how you always strive to do your best in the interview. And you can do this but with your answers. You want to talk about stories and give examples when you share answers to the questions with an employer. So tell stories, give examples. You want to show how, when, where, etc., that you put forth that extra effort maybe to go above and beyond the call of duty. You want to maybe show how you beat a deadline or excelled in a project, or you made a difference by going the extra mile. You want to show that you have this positive attitude and you always want to strive to do your best. So you want to start thinking about stories about your background. You can look at your resume and you can look at your work and your experience and your involvement and all the things you've done in your life. And you could start really thinking more of not just overall what I did, but maybe a specific example. If it was customer service, and that's one of the key skills that this employer wants, you really need to think about a time that you excelled in customer service, and not just be general, but specific by sharing a story about a customer who came in and what did you do to address that, okay? So, so you want to be ready to share that story in detail, which we'll be talking about next. All right, thank you. I'll let Nora take it on, speaking of that.
Thank you, Alita. So behavioral based interviewing is actually one way in which employers are really trying to get those stories out of you. And the whole concept behind this is that your past actions sort of predict the future. And so employers are incorporating behavioral interview questions more and more nowadays, because typically with these questions, there's no right or wrong answer. It's more about your thought process, and it's more about sharing specific examples for situations that you might actually encounter in that workplace. And so the employer really wants to know maybe how you problem solve, or how you problem solved in the past, because again, that will indicate how you might problem solve or deal with conflict in the workplace. So there are some general categories to sort of anticipate in preparing for your interview. And as Alita mentioned, you want to think about stories that that revolve around your projects, your work, your volunteer experiences, academics and co-curricular activities, your strengths, weaknesses, and abilities. You are learning and really kind of fine-tuning your career readiness skills, right? Your communication, your leadership, your ability to work in a team, and all these transferable skills are things that you will bring with you into the workplace. And so by sharing some of these stories, rather than just saying, well, I'm a hard worker, or I'm someone who's motivated, you're actually painting a picture for what that looks like. So the employer is able to better visualize it and just really have a better grasp on what that looks like and what that means for you. So most behavioral interview questions will start off by either tell me about a time when, please provide an example of a time when, and so again, there's a few examples there for you on this slide. So the first one is really kind of, the employer wants to know a little bit more about your initiative and your motivation. And so when they ask, tell me about a time when you went above and beyond what was required of you, they are really wanting to know whether you're motivated and what that looks like for you. So you might want to think back to even a group project that you might have had in class and how you went above and beyond, maybe by leading the group, by delegating assignments, etc. So that might look, different for all of you, but again, you want to anticipate some of these questions and have examples. Tell me about a time when you encountered resistance from a colleague or a student. Sometimes these questions might ask you to address situations or to provide examples for situations that might have been somewhat difficult. And what that employer really wants to know is, how do you problem solve? How do you communicate with others? And what steps do you take to really resolve some of those issues that come up in, the everyday work life of a professional? Again, there's other questions in there, like tell me about a time when you overcame a crisis, when you worked on a project that went well, and when you took initiative and led the way. So one thing to keep in mind with all of these questions is that even if you were in a team type of environment, you really want to focus in on your contributions. So what contributions did you make to that particular team? What were your actions? And so I'm going to go ahead and go on to the next slide, where I'm going to share with you this strategy. So if you're not familiar with the S.T.A.R concept, this is something that you really want to familiarize yourself with. It does take practice. So start now in terms of preparing for those interviews. S.T.A.R is an acronym. It stands for the situation, the task, action, and results. So when you think about that acronym, it really keeps your story organized. It allows you to go full circle and to be specific. Because again, when that employer is asking for an example, they don't want to know that you have dealt with conflict all the time in the workplace and in school. They want to know about one specific scenario. So taking the time to write down some of these answers will actually help you. In fact, one of our colleagues, Daniel, who is the liaison to the College of Science and Math, shared an email with us earlier today. And I actually took some notes because I wanted to share this with you. And so he shared a story of a recent, I'm assuming, graduate who was applying for a full-time microbiologist, one position with BSK Associates. And so that particular student or alumni had a panel interview via Zoom. And again, you know, nowadays you might experience a lot of online interviews. Employers might be asking you to record your answers, or they might be doing a live Zoom interview. So for this particular student, most of the questions that were asked revolved around behavioral interview questions and also personality. And ultimately, that company really wanted to get a good grasp on who they are and what their personality was like. So some of the things that that student did to prepare is they conducted a mock interview, which will share a few tools that you can use to conduct online mock interviews. But they also wrote down examples using the S.T.A.R concept. And there is a worksheet. I'm going to actually, in just a minute, share with you the page for that. But in our career success guide, which you can find on our website, you will find a worksheet that allows you to work through 2 behavioral interview questions. And preparing these answers really helped this particular candidate. And now they also made sure that their technology was working, their room was set up, right? So they took all the steps necessary to reduce some of that anxiety and some of the stress that they might experience with a Zoom interview. And although ultimately that individual wasn't offered that position, they were offered a different position. So that position ended up going to someone who was working internally with the company already. But because they liked this candidate so much, they had this need for a chemist, one, I believe, for another lab position, they were able to still bring them on board. So behavioral interviewing is really important. Take your time with these stories and prepare them in advance. We encourage you to have 3 to 5 of them prepared before your interview. So although you can't anticipate exactly what they're going to ask you, you might be able to use an example of your leadership to address a question that deals with communication. So a lot of times those stories can be interchangeable. So here you will find an example of a behavioral answer. And the question here is to describe the most challenging team experience that you have encountered. So you are going to find this sample question and answer on page 37 of our career success guide. The worksheet is on page 38 of that guide. And we'll have our website on the last slide of this presentation today. So, but again, as you can see with this particular example here, there was a little bit of an issue with one particular team member. And so when you look at the actions, you can see really what that individual did to address the situation. So we talk about the situation, which really kind of sets the tone, right? It tells us a little bit more about the type of project that they were involved in, the class that they were enrolled in. So you really want to, again, introduce some of that to that employer so that they understand the setting. Then they go into the task. So this is what they were trying to accomplish. This tells the employer a little bit more about the goal. And again, what you were trying to accomplish overall. Then the actions. And you will see on there that there aren't really any we statements. So this is where you really want to focus on those I statements. What were your individual contributions? What were the actions that you took? And then don't forget about the results. So just like a movie, right? We want to see the ending and how that movie ends. Make sure that you give them the ending. So don't forget the results If you can quantify, quantify, but make sure you let them know how that situation ended, maybe what you learned from it, and the overall results. So again, page 38 of the Career Success Guide is where you will find that worksheet, and we encourage you to have 3 to 5 stories ready to go for your interview.
Thank you, Nora. I'd like to just add one little thing to this. With virtual, your words are so important because remember, you are now in a tiny little box. You have very little room to show your emotions. So this is why S.T.A.R is so helpful, because you are able to show your passion and your love for what you do and for the experiences that you've had. And it allows you to use your words to paint that picture. So really practice at that. And as Nora said, that last portion result is something that employers really, really want to hear about. So for those of you who have joined us over the series, this may look familiar to you. This is the resume and job description that Sheila and Daniel had for their resume webinar. And so you can see that, of course, there are highlighted portions. So what this is showing is how do you bridge the job description and your resume so that you can tailor your answers for your interview and to highlight your skills and your experiences. So you can see that we have here things such as working in teams, collaboration, which ties in customer focus role, volunteer work, the social media, and worked with a team. So now let's carry that forward. So if you wouldn't mind advancing a slide. So the question of tell me about yourself. This typically is the first question that most people will hear. It's kind of an icebreaker. In this question, it's not meant to be a resume overview. Remember, this is the first question. There's plenty of time to share a lot of those other experiences. This is just a tidbit. For those of you who have created an elevator pitch, you can actually take your elevator pitch and tailor it to answer this question. So you can see some of the words have been bolded. Those have been pulled from the resume and the connection between the resume and the job description. So we can highlight the fact that all of you are recent graduates, so you can talk about the fact that you just graduated from Fresno State with a bachelor's degree and in this case, it's communication. During college, I worked in 2 different settings where I provided over 2 years of excellent customer service tied into the job description. I applied my collaboration skills, so important. Realize collaboration covers 2 aspects, communication, as well as that teamwork aspect. Positive attitude, strong work ethic, and don't forget to highlight the fact of why you want to work for them. Very excited about the opportunity to become part of the CVS Health family, which was taken directly from the job description. You are using their words in order to basically hack that question and to provide a strong answer. Can you advance? So remember, it's actually, can you go back? Yeah. So remember, it's all about how is it relevant to the position? You need to practice these for each individual job description because there are going to be some similarities, but there are also going to be some differences. So having that generic answer isn't going to benefit you. Make sure you tailor your answers. Practice those. And then also what makes you the best candidate for this position. Tie that in. Okay, Nora. So some commonly themed questions, what they want to know about are your strengths and those strengths that are suitable specifically for the job that you're applying for, that you're interviewing for. And then also identifying your weaknesses. Being self-aware and giving a self-evaluation is actually very good. It's okay that you need to improve on things. Employers respect and encourage the fact that you can identify a weakness, how you are working on it, going back to the whole STAR aspect, and what do those results look like? It doesn't mean you have to have those completely resolved, but that you are actually working on them and improving. And then don't forget your hard and soft skills. I know that in this day and age, technology is really big, but employers still want to know about those interpersonal skills that you need to excel at the job. Because even in those positions where you may be working alone a lot, you still have team members and you still need to interact. So how do you provide to the client as well as your coworkers and utilizing hard and soft skills? And if you can advance. So going back to the career success guide on pages 41 and 42, there are some interview questions as well as examples of how to answer those. Remember, tailor them to your industry as well as to your experiences. Don't just pull the answers directly from the book. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so closing that interview, you want to have a strong closing, right? Pretty much 99.9% of employers end their interviews by asking, do you have any questions or is there anything you'd like to add? So you want to be prepared to for the ending, right? So these are some areas that you might ask about in that interview. In fact, on page 40 in the Career Success Guide, I know that we've mentioned that several times today. There's a great interview section in that book, and this is also addressed on page 40. So you don't have to, on the spot go, oh yeah, I should ask a question. What should I ask, right? You're not going to do that in an interview. You're going to have those questions ready. And so in advance, you want to go through these and some of the ones we have on page 40, and you should actually type 3 or 4 questions, maybe 3 to 5, and have them sitting in front of you. We're talking about online interviews. So have them sitting in front of you, in front of your laptop there, along with your resume. As Nora said earlier, you want that resume there as well. And have those questions ready. So you don't have to think of them. You've already thought of them ahead of time, right? So have those ready, have them typed out. And even as you're asking them, if you want to write down notes, that's fine, because you ask those questions, not just to ask questions. You really want to know the answer. So, so have them ready and you can even write those answers. And then you'll appear ready, of course, to that employer. And so let's say you've asked your questions. So you ask 2 or 3 questions, they give you the answers, etc. And then they say anything else, because they're not going to just say, okay, bye. They're going to ask you anything else, usually. So what you want to do is, after you ask your questions, as it says here, thank the interviewer, right? So always say thank you. And I don't mean say thank you like when the interview's over. We've done a lot of practice interviews with students, right? And all of us could probably shake our heads to this. Usually you say anything else and you're hoping someone will say thank you. Maybe 1 out of, I don't even know, 50 students says thank you during the interview. So at the end, when the interview's over, then they say, oh, well, thank you. And it's like, wait, that's after the fact. So you want to do it right in that interview. So as you're saying thank you, what it also does is it gives you a chance to then get your last 2 cents in, if you want to call it, or with inflation, maybe it's your last $50. I don't know, but it gives you a chance to go right to from the thank you to saying something to leave a positive impression with that employer. Remember, we talked about positive attitude as being the #1 area that employers look for in candidates. So this is your time to be positive and be upbeat and end it with letting them know that you really want this job. So I think some of the ways that I say that is like, let's say you go, thank you. I was so excited to get that email when you selected me for an interview. I was just really excited. And hopefully today you got a chance to learn more about me. You learn more about my background, my experience, my qualifications. And I hope you can see that I have the skills that you're looking for. And I hope you pick me to be on your team. I would really enjoy working with you. And so that's kind of ending that interview by taking taking the reins in your hands and guiding that along. So closing that interview with asking questions, saying thank you, and then asking for the job is what I like to say is very important, right? Okay, So we're going to move on to now, let's say the interview is done and you're.
I have a question.
Yes.
I have a question. Sorry to interrupt.
No, no, go.
So there's a question about, and this is asked a lot. You know, we live in the age of technology. Do you think employers, panelists would prefer an email thank you or a handwritten thank you? I know I have a personal preference. Handwritten because they never get them. I've had employers say they're so shocked to get a handwritten note. But sometimes that doesn't always work. So wondering what you guys think about that question.
Next slide, and then we'll talk about it.
Yay.
Here we go. Look at that. Okay. So after your interview, as I said, and Debbie was leading, that was good, Debbie, leading us right into this slide here. So yes, so just like you verbally said thank you, you should always write thank you too. You have to write a thank you. And that could be in form of various types of things, but you want to send it probably very short, like that day or the next day. And depending on what you decide to do, you could email, you could mail, you could type it, you could handwrite it. We've seen and heard from all different, methods. Just don't bring gifts, okay? So Nora's going to smile because I think, no, maybe you weren't around, but we had a candidate, we were interviewing for a position, and one of the candidates showed up like a day or so after the interview, and she brought us all like candy in a jar for the whole staff as a thank you for her interview, and so one of our staff ate it all up really quickly, and then the HR somehow they found out we got these, and then they're like, people can't do that. You can't do that, and you're not supposed to be eating those. That was really funny. So don't send gifts, okay? No bribing people, let's call it, but anyway. But you really do want to thank them verbally, and then now in written form. So you get to decide. I don't know if there's a right or wrong answer here. It's mainly you do it, okay? Do it. Try it out. Try see what works best for you. I think handwritten is very nice because people don't get those. If you do it by email, it's going to be an email. In fact, back to the success guide on page 33 in our career success guide, we have both an email thank you and a letter thank you. So one's formal and one's an email situation. Now, what I like about the email is that maybe you interviewed and you forgot to say something. I could still picture myself. I've been in my job for so long, and I could still think back years ago, and I will never forget when I walked out of one interview when I went, oh, no, why didn't I say that? I forgot to say that. And how many of us have walked out of an interview with that same thing? So in your email thank you, you can actually say, by the way, after you thank them, by the way, when you asked me this, I forgot to add this. And you can actually type that in there so that maybe they will actually get that feedback. You still could share it with them, right? But it's more of an email situation. But let me just also say that you have to be very careful, because when you're interviewing for government or school districts or those that have very formalized, structured interviews, there's the email, the thank you is sort of after the fact. But every other interview, when it's like a private company or industry, then that email where you added things could maybe make a difference. But it's, no matter what you do, it's good to thank people. You could try the different methods. You can try to see what works best, but it's very important that you do that. In fact, don't skip this step. There are so many people that skip the thank you, and it can make a difference. I've been presenting in classes, and I've had students say, you know what, I was hired because I was real equal with another candidate. They told me that we were both very great candidates, and the only thing different about the two of us was that I sent a thank you and the other person didn't, and that thank you made a difference. So it could make a difference. And guess what? It's a nice thing to do, right? You grew up probably with your parents saying, hey, you got a gift from grandma. What are you supposed to do? You got to call her or send a letter or send a thank you. But thanking people is so valuable. Hopefully these are going to be your teammates one day, and they can see that you're very conscientious of that team. So I don't know if there's a right or wrong answer here. I think you don't want to send those greeting cards with dancing daisies, though. No links to e-greeting cards and such. But so a mail, an email, a typed or handwritten, you get to be you. What is you? What feels closest to you? Some people are more formal. Some people are more, informal, and also maybe it depends on the industry as well. So anyone else want to chime in? Debbie, Nora?
Alita, I have another question, but I want to just give a really quick example. I had a business student who applied for a sales job, And the recruiter was from out of town and it was at a hotel. So after the interview, the student walked out to his car, sat down, had a blank thank you note, wrote the thank you note, took it inside, left it at the front desk. They delivered it to his suite. The student got the job. And the guy said to him, I am so amazed that you gave me that thank you note like 5 minutes after you did the interview. I mean, that was just an incredible example. Someone is asking right now under the Q&A, when should I include a cover letter? Do we do it as an attachment or as the email subject? Not sure if this was covered in other webinars. But when we need to include a cover letter, I'm sorry, do we do it as an attachment or as the email subject?
Well, it depends on how you're applying, right? So I always say if you're uploading into some system, sometimes they only let you upload, a resume, for instance. So in that case, I would make page 1 my cover letter and page 2 my resume. And when you upload that, it goes with it, and they will get that cover letter along with the the resume. Now, other systems allow you to add other attachments, so you'll be able to add your resume, your cover letter, etc. Email, the same thing. When you email your resume, if an employer says email your resume to me if you're interested, that type of thing, your cover letter is actually your email. And again, if you go to our career success guide, wow, we just love our career success guide. We do. But if you go to our career success guide, there is an actual email cover letter in there as a sample. So you're not going to say in your email, see attached, and you're going to attach your cover letter and your resume. Your cover letter is actually your email. And then the resume, of course, is attached. So look at the book, and you'll be able to follow those guidelines. And so I think it depends on how you're applying, how they were asked you to apply, and what system you're using, that if it allows you to upload cover letters or not. But I always say there's no excuse. You can always put a cover letter with a resume as that document. Anyone else? Is that good?
I think you
I
covered.
think you covered it.
All right, good. All right, so
Thank you.
Let's go to this next slide. So we talked about interviewing a lot today. We talked about all these different areas for you to kind of get ready. But, just like anything, practice makes perfect, hopefully, and builds confidence. So we have 2 different tools available for you to practice. I saw some of the chat earlier. I was kind of watching that as others were talking, and I know someone has an interview coming up. So that's a great time when you actually have an interview coming up. You can actually practice for that interview and get ready for that interview with that job in mind. So 2 tools. One we have is Standout, and that system actually allows you to record yourself, and it gives you some analytics of what you say, and if you pause, or if you say or a lot, that type of thing, it will actually notify you of all this in the system. So what you do is you go to this link, and now this will be this PowerPoint. If any of you want this, you should probably email. Who should we have them email to get this? Because yesterday you had them email me for the LinkedIn presentation. Nora, do you want them to email you?
They can email me.
Okay, so Debbie, can you type in the chat Nora's email address so students could email Nora if you want this PowerPoint? And then you can also just click on that hyperlink and get into it. So, but you can go to that website, and then once you get in there, you're going to want to click on the green button to log in, and you just graduated, or you're graduating, or whatever, you have an email from Fresno State. So this is a single sign-on system, so it's going to have you put in your Fresno State username and your password to get into the system. And then once you get into the system, you're going to click select practice on the top. And then you're going to watch this it's called Welcome to Standout video, which is the slide in front of you. That's the woman that kind of gives you the little practice video. You're going to answer a couple questions, and it's going to show you what it looks like right there on the slide. And then now you're ready to go ahead and practice. So you click begin practice, and it'll give you that chance. When you're ready to do your own real interview after you practice with her, just go back to the practice and click on top 10 interview questions. That will allow you to use Standout. And just to mention, I know Nora had mentioned one of our other career advisors had been working with some students recently, and she shared a story that he had. He also worked with another student. He conducted a mock interview, And then the student was prepared for her interview. So she had a phone interview for the first interview. And then they called her back for a second interview. And that was actually online using a different type of software there. And she said she was very stressed. She was super stressed by using this online platform. She already had prepared. She had a second interview, but she wished she would have used Standout to better prepare. So if you do have a Zoom interview or some other online interview that we're talking about today, definitely practice. Use this system. It times you. It pretty much gives you 1 minute to answer a question. And some of these other systems will allow you a certain amount of time as well. So practice using these tools. Standout is a very good one to use, and you'll like the analytics that it answers. It evaluates you. And what I found is you have to be very I think Marc brought this up, and he's going to talk about this next. The difference between in-person interviewing and online interviewing is night and day in some cases, especially with technology. So when you use Standout, you have to enunciate clearly, because I practiced with this and I said, hi, I'm a career counselor, blah, 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 blah. And it didn't even interpret my career counselor. It gave something else on the screen. So try to practice enunciating your words and perhaps even slowing down a little bit, which I tend to talk fast. So maybe practice slowing down, because when you're online, that's another thing is hearing things differently. So those are two things. I want to mention LinkedIn real quick before we go on, that if you click on that LinkedIn or go to that site, there's 26 common questions that are shared in that website. And it's great. It has tips, sample answers. You can actually even practice. You can do it by writing, or you can record yourself. And then it actually gives you artificial intelligence feedback as well. Or you could send that to one of your connections for feedback. So these are great resources for you. We hope you will take advantage of these. And Marc's going to talk about technology next. So, all right, we're moving on to the next slide. Great. Yeah, practice. Very good.
Thank you, Alita. So let's go through our online interviewing checklist. So let's start with technology. Remember that you need to practice. Understand the platform that the employer is using. And this means setting that platform up prior and not the night before. Why not the night before? Because if you are having any issues, perhaps the platform is down when you're trying to set it up, you're not going to be able to call that employer until the next morning. So be sure to set it up, install or create an account if necessary, much like Zoom, because you're not guaranteed that they will be using Zoom. And then test the platform. Make sure that your camera and your microphone are communicating well. And then also somebody mentioned virtual backgrounds. Actually, sorry, that's in the next section. But testing the platform allows you to see what are the components that software uses. So most of you have probably gotten pretty comfortable using Zoom and have looked at some of the bells and whistles that it has to offer, one of which that I am utilizing is that virtual background. So moving into environment, we can actually begin with virtual backgrounds. So the pros and cons I did mention. In terms of virtual backgrounds, I just simply did a search on Google and looked at images, high resolution, and I typed in backdrops. I typed in, you can do the fun ones, of course, but in professional, you want to definitely choose one that looks professional. I just simply did background with bookshelves, and I found this one, and I really liked it. And so it's what I use. Not all systems are going to allow you to do this. Zoom does. I do know that there are some that have had issues with virtual backgrounds when it comes to PCs. Unfortunately, I can't tell you why that is, but this is where you want to be prepared, because perhaps you will need to readjust your setting, your environment, so that your surroundings look more professional. Be sure to eliminate distractions. Distractions can be anything such as a fan being too close and then you've got the fan noise. Could be pets. Practice with your pet. If your pet isn't used to you sitting in a room without them and then they start barking, they start meowing, this could even also translate to family or friends who are with you. Make sure you let everybody know that you are going to have an interview and not to distract you, not to enter while you're in the middle of your interview. Remember, life happens. You can't account for everything, but you can try your best to take out some of that. A car going down the street, honking, playing loud music, that's not something that you can control. Remember, stay calm. Life happens. If a car goes by, plane flies over, train is going down the tracks and blaring their horn, pause. It's okay. The interviewer knows that life happens and that is beyond your control. Don't get flustered with it. Same with technology. Let's take one step back because there is something I wanted to mention in technology. When you begin the interview, set up that contingency plan in case, heaven forbid, you lose power or your modem happens to go out. Make sure that they know and you know and are on the same playing field, that maybe if it's through Zoom that you're going to phone in, and if you get disconnected or lose internet and continue that way, or do they want to contact you? Do they want to call you? So set that up before it begins. They will see that as that you are planning ahead, and it will look good for you. The great thing about the virtual interview is that you can have notes, your notepad, your resume all in front of you. But remember, remember where the camera is, and that's where you want to be looking. If you're looking down, especially with somebody like myself who, if I'm looking down, then you would be staring at a shiny head, top of my head. That's not good. Know where your camera is. If you're working on a laptop, you may want to elevate the laptop using a box or some sort of laptop riser. Avoid using your phone. The reason for that is on the screen right now, you see myself, Nora, Alita, and if you're looking at a panel of 3 or more, that's going to get really crowded on your phone and it's going to be hard to see everything. Okay? Don't be afraid to look down at your notes. Keeping eye contact does not mean staring at the camera 24/7. It's okay to look down, but try it. It's all about those micro expressions and micro actions. Nora, can you advance? Great. We talked about dressing head to toe, places you in the professional mindset, be comfortable in your clothes. And then remember body language, your posture. That means make sure you have a comfortable chair that you're in. You're going to be sitting there for 45 minutes to an hour. And then, as I mentioned, eye contact. Make sure you're looking at the camera and not the screen. Adjust the camera angle. Play with that. And then test run. Suit up, create the setting, and run the software, and just practice. Okay. So at this time, we're going to share a short video with you that will kind of go over what we've talked about today. This video is from our career spots, which you can find on our website, and it has many more videos about career skills that you can utilize.
So Mark, we're
Yes.
we're getting
Are
close
we going to forego
to
that? Okay, not a problem.
We're going to go ahead and skip the video.
Okay.
I want to make sure that I show this last slide with our
definitely.
email address, our phone number, and our website. That video that Mark just mentioned, it is available online. If you go to our website and scroll down to our web-based resources, click on the career spots, little circle, bubble, whatever you want to call it, but go ahead and click on that. And there are a lot of short interviewing videos that you can watch. This one in particular is really great. So I apologize for running out of time. But go online, watch it. Again, you have my email address. So if you want a copy of today's PowerPoint, I can email that to you. And that video is embedded into the presentation. So you'll be able to watch it from there as well. And we will also be uploading this webinar recording onto our website. So you will actually see that on the homepage. We have an accordion with sliding images, and one of those sliding images is for our virtual workshops where this will be uploaded. So I just want to thank everyone for joining us today, and check in with you, Debbie, to see if there are any last minute questions.
I think you did an awesome job, panelists. All questions have been answered, and we'd like to thank you for all your great information today. They're loving it.
Thank you.
I'd like to also thank everybody for attending and good luck on your future endeavors.